you heard my first line. I looked at the crowd here tonight, and I'm sure that I'm not alone. So, I live in Connecticut now. I have for quite a few years, but I'm originally from Philadelphia. I lived in an area of Philadelphia. Our neighborhood was lower class, mostly immigrants, and there was not a lot for us to do. It was summertime. I was 17 years old, and we were just hanging out on the corner. That's what we did in Philadelphia, during the 70s, right? Had absolutely nothing to do. Let me tell you a little bit about our neighborhood and some of the people there. We were mostly immigrant families. My parents immigrated to this country, so I'm a child of immigrants. But part of the whole group was what we called the mothers. The mothers were a group of housewives that really kept an eye on what was going on in the neighborhood. For some reason, they knew everything that myself and my friends were doing. Right? We just viewed them as busybodies, but we knew that they were there and they would keep an eye on us. Now, as mentioned before, we didn't have a lot to do. We were bored. Right? Some of my friends decided that they were going to pass the time for the summer and become train robbers. Now, a lot of you people may have a romantic vision right now of a cowboy galloping alongside a train with their 6-gun shooting and hopping on the train. It wasn't quite that. What occurred is in our neighborhood there was a train track nearby where boxcars were left overnight, and a group of people would go in and break into the boxcars. And the outlaws in our neighborhood doing this, they got booty ranging anywhere from cases and cases of Cool Whip to also some hard liquor. I have to tell you, the neighborhood was not a pretty sight after a night of teenagers binge drinking green cream de menthe. So anyway, my friends that were doing this, they approached me one day and were suggesting that I join them that evening. And I was seriously considering it. So later on that day, we're again back on the corner, and a Philadelphia police car comes around the corner very slowly, stops abruptly. The officer gets out of the car, leans over his hood, points his gun at me, and says, "Freeze." I don't know if anybody has been in a situation like that, but it's actually quite terrifying. I did not know what to do. So shortly thereafter, 2 more cop cars pull up, lights and sirens going. They get out with their guns drawn as well. So I'm there, I'm bent over the hood of a car, and they start to frisk me. And then one of the mothers comes over and starts, questioning the cop about what's going on. What's happening? What did he do? Why are you doing this? And apparently, and I found out about this later, that I met the description of somebody that a witness identified for a murder that happened locally, nearby, earlier in the day. The description was a young teenager, somewhat thin, with long hair, believe it, long hair, and wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Jeans and a t-shirt was a normal dress for everybody in our neighborhood, but I guess I fit the other descriptions. So the cop identified me as a possible suspect, and again, I'm bent over the hood of the car, and they're getting ready to handcuff me. Mrs. McGee, who's one of the mothers, comes down and starts screaming at the cops, "What's going on? What did he do?" And they said, "Well, he's a suspect in a murder." And she starts yelling at the police, saying, "How could he be? He's been here all day. I can attest to that." Now, in our neighborhood, the mothers had a whole grapevine, I don't know how they did it, where they all knew what was going on almost instantaneously. There was no mobile phones, no texting, nothing else going on. I suspect smoke signals, but that's what happened. So as this is occurring, the mothers are there and the rest of the neighborhood is there as well. Eventually, a sergeant is dispatched because the mothers are just giving him a really, really hard time that he couldn't have done this. Sergeant comes over, he's walking over, trying to get things figured out, and then we hear come across the radio that they actually apprehended the actual suspect. They picked him up and identified that. So the police let me go. Thinking back on all of this, if it had not been for the mothers intervening, I would have been locked up and taken off to the station and probably been processed and really been arrested for murder. So I really need to thank the mothers. So I think we can call them the mothers of intervention. Thank you.